Hey, what's going on, everybody? How's it going? I'm Ian Douglas. I am the author of this website, Tech Interview Guide. Let me shut this off over here. I don't know why that math thing keeps popping up every time I start the stream, but well, let's see. Let's zoom out so you can see the website. There we go. Cool. So I'm Ian Douglas. I'm the author of this website, Tech Interview Guide. Lots of advice on career advancement and interview preparation, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. What are we up to today? Just gonna go through some more. Hey, Zooey, good to see you in chat. Happy Sunday. Hope you're doing good. Yeah, I thought I'd go through some more questions on Discord. Got a bunch more queued up. We kind of drained out the remaining streams, kind of going back into like all through May into April, and been sending those out on YouTube and the podcast audio every day. And so if you're watching these on YouTube, please like and subscribe. You're always welcome to comment on things. Let me know if you agree with advice. If you don't agree with advice, that's okay too. I think it's good to hear lots of opinions. But I think what I'm going to do going forward is I'm going to do them like every 2 days. Since we're going to be having more guests on the stream, I'm going to be doing probably a little bit less Q&A types of streams, where I'm going to try to like do those on the Thursdays when we don't have guests, things like that. Today we were supposed to have a guest, and they contacted me yesterday saying that their laptop stopped working. So no guests today after all. We'll have them on a future stream. So I thought today we'd go through some more questions and just get some Q&A stuff queued up. I think if I do every other day, I think we're good through like most of September. Or into September, I think. I gotta go double check. Always second guessing myself on that stuff. We're good into the beginning of September. If I remember right. September 1st, September 4th, September 6th, September 10th. So we're good through about like mid-September. If I do like every other day. So what I'll probably do is I'm going to queue these up like every other day. I thought about just doing like Monday to Friday and not doing videos on weekends and things like that, but it's all kind of automated at this point anyway, so it really didn't matter. But instead of doing them every single day and then having like a bunch of gaps where there's like nothing being put out on YouTube, I thought that I would just do like every other day. So that way there's still content going out like all the time, just to help people out. So Zooey, good to see you. Let's chat about your job. How's the job going? How are things going over there? Hey, Robo Oso, good to see you as well. Fool Snable, good to see you too. Give everybody some blinky lights. Hello.
Hey!
Hope you're doing well. Let's see what else is going on around here. Not much else going on, to be honest. On Thursday, this coming Thursday, we're going to be doing just resume reviews on Thursday. And so one thing that I think I'm going to do is go into my, if I can find it, I guess I got to open a new window for it, is I would like to add a new chatbot command for a resume sample. Because what I'm thinking on Thursday, there are a whole bunch of resumes that got sent in when Tiffany Jacha was on the stream a few weeks back, and we did a whole bunch of resume reviews. I think we had like 6 or 8 resumes come in, and Tiffany and I only got through 4 of them. So if you have a resume that you want to submit, you can go ahead and do that. I'll post the link over here in chat. You can submit a resume over here. But what I want to do is I want to go build a chat command called like resume sample that's going to point to a Google Doc that I'll just give everybody access to, where on Thursday, when I'm doing resume reviews, I'm actually going to pull up this Google Doc, and I'm actually going to like work out some samples of like, here's some sample bullet points, here's some samples, like here's a sample of how I might do a project, here's an example of like how I might do a skills block, and just that way people have like little sample ideas that they can like copy and paste into an editor and so on. So I think I'm going to go do that, and might as well just do that live while we're here, right? So let me go figure all that out. Otherwise, I think I'll just do some Q&A today, and we'll get some of that stuff going here in a minute. So let me go over to my Google Drive. Yep, and then we'll do Look resumes, and we will do a new Google Doc in here. I'm just going to call this like resume samples. And I will share that publicly. Anyone with the link can be a commenter. Done. And then let's see, copy that link. And then I'm going to go into the chat bot and static content, static responses. Where's my resume review? There's resume review. And we're going to call this one resume sample. Here is a Google Doc with resume samples. Here's a Google Doc with samples of resume content that you can borrow from. And put a comma at the end of that. And if I come over here and restart the bot and come back over here and we go to resume sample. Now we have a resume sample. All right, so if you click on that link, it should take you over to a Google Doc, and from there we will do some samples and stuff in there. So that'll be for Thursday. So it'll be an empty doc right now, but on Thursday I'll actually be in this doc and I'll like show people kind of live, like, oh, here's your resume. Let me grab a copy of that. Let me put it over in here and let me show you how to rework that kind of like on the fly and ready to go. So today we're not going to do resume reviews. I just wanted to get that set up for Thursday, so that's ready to go. But today I think we're just going to do some Q&A. We were supposed to have a guest on the stream, but they contacted me yesterday and said that their laptop stopped working, which is unfortunate, but it happens. So we're going to have them on another stream another time. So I thought today we would just go through some more like Discord questions and so on. If you've got questions as well, you're welcome to drop those in chat. Yeah, let's see. Is anybody doing any job hunting today? Is anybody doing any company research? Can I help with any company research and give you my ideas on how I research a company, things like that. So if you like whatever, like I'm happy to kind of let the stream go in any direction that y'all want it to go today. I don't really have any theme for today's stream. So if you've got something that you'd like to chat about, or anything along those lines, I'm open to ideas. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to draw questions from Discord, and we'll go through some Q&A today. Let's see. Had some people write some stuff in our leak code channel. People talking about like big O notation and stuff like that, which is awesome. Always appreciate people sharing ideas in there. Big O notation is like one of those really confusing things about like, is it just like n squared, or is it like n squared plus this part's n log n times, you're doing this 3 iteration n squared loop, blah, blah, blah. And you can get into these really long kinds of algorithmic functions of big O notation. I think at the end of the day, if it's that complex, then you probably need to break your function down into smaller components so that you can say this function is n squared, this function is n log n. When we call them together, it produces this. But like when I try to plan out my big O notation, I try to plan it out as one small function at a time, because then for me it's a little bit easier to figure out, okay, this function is n squared, which means if anything calls it's going to slow everything else down, so I need to improve that one, as opposed to coming up with one algorithm that does all the things and then having like a really complex big O notation to try to work out. So yeah, so I thought I'd just go through some Discord questions for today and get some more of those things queued up. And so what I was explaining at the very beginning of the stream, sorry, I need to clean my glasses. What I was explaining at the very beginning of the stream is that we've kind of drained out a lot of the Q&A, going back into the streams all the way back to early May, I think late April. And so I could keep going back and like looking at older streams and like extracting questions and stuff out of those. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'd like to have more recent advice because, you know, I learn and grow all the time too. And I know for a fact that some of my answers have changed over time. And so I'd prefer to have like the newer content sort of taking precedent and not have new content come out on YouTube and the podcast audio, which is actually old advice, if that makes sense, because those are going to be like new files coming out. I don't want it to be the old advice, like things around like, you know, oh yeah, the economy's doing great, like go get a job, there's lots of jobs out there. It's like, well, there was back in April and May, not so much right now. And so like I would rather have more advice now around like, hey, the economy's not doing so great, might take a little longer to get that job, and have that be the more recent advice being given out, as opposed to, oh yeah, things are great, you're gonna go make that bag and make tons and tons of money, when that's not necessarily going to be the case right now. So I don't want advice that's really old to come out now. So I think I'm not going to go back through any more previous episodes to extract questions. And I've gone through and I've taken all of the full episodes and I've put those in a playlist of just the full episodes. And so if you actually want to help me out on YouTube, one thing that would be really, really helpful, and hopefully it's not against YouTube, you know, standards or whatever to ask this, but I have a playlist set up for all of the full episodes. And what would be really helpful for me, if you could help me out with this, go follow me on YouTube as well. Subscribing on YouTube is free. If you can follow me on YouTube, that would be great. If you can load up a browser tab in the background and have it run through the playlist of the full episodes, and then just go play all those in the background at like 2x speed, and then mute that browser tab. If you're using Chrome, you can Chrome and Edge, and I think Brave, maybe Opera will do this too, is you can right click on the tab and you can say mute the tab, and so you don't actually hear the audio, but let it just play that whole playlist and just let it play at 2x speed and just let it keep playing in the background. If you don't have bandwidth restrictions, I want to be clear on that. Like if you have limited bandwidth, then obviously you can't help out with that, but you can also turn the quality of it like way down, so that it's not going to use up a ton of bandwidth. But if you could help me out with that, I need the viewable hours. We're coming up close on 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, but in order to monetize, I also need 1,000 subscribers and I need 4,000 hours of content watched. We're somewhere around 2,200 hours of content watched. And so, so once I hit 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours worth of video watched, so if you can help me out and just play that playlist in the background at 2x speed, really low quality, so it won't use a ton of bandwidth, that would actually be really helpful for the channel. It feels weird to ask for that kind of favor from everybody, but if you could help me out with that, that would be great. It's definitely a tough market for some folks here in Minnesota. Yeah. I already made a YouTube video on this. I can look for that too. Let me go check out RoboOso's question. I'd love to know your thoughts on researching companies. I've been using Glassdoor and the company's website so far, but I'm sure there are other things I could use. Yeah, I'll definitely. So RoboOso, let's go through that. I also noticed starting salaries for some entry-level software positions are lower. I'm wondering if that's becoming the norm or just something I'm seeing. I haven't done a ton of research. So RoboOso, you're bringing up some really good questions here, and I'll totally help you out. Do me a favor, give me a company, and I'll show you how I research that company and where I go to get information, and how I track that information and so on. Let's do that. Let's dive in on some company research for today, and let's help you by researching a company. And if it's a company that you've already researched, then that's fine. I'll still give you like some thoughts and ideas around it. Maybe it'll be something new, but I'll show you like how I track that information and stuff like that, if that would be helpful. So yeah, let's go through some of that. Let me pull up where is it? I have company research. There it is. I don't know if I have a link for this one or not. Let me go double check viewer, commenter, gonna go copy this link. I'm gonna go add a new chatbot command for this because I don't think I have one. I do not have one for this. So I'm going to go build a new chat command called research. Here is a spreadsheet about company research. Oops. I'm not in Vim. Let me go restart the bot. And then Khan Academy. Yeah, Khan Academy. We can definitely go check them out. Let me get the bot restarted here. Why does it think static response is line 1? What? Oh, what the heck is that coming from? All right, get the chatbot restarted, and then if we do research. All right, so RoboOso, go check out this link, and this will be a spreadsheet that we're going to use for company research. So let me share my screen over here, and then I will show you how I do that research. I'm going to need to like resize browser windows and stuff like that. So bear with me while I switch my screen and get that loaded up over here. So we're going to go over to here. We're going to go to the browser, and we're going to pull up company research, and I will resize this window a tiny bit, pull that down a little bit, pull that over a tiny little bit. Cool. So this is a spreadsheet that I like to use to start tracking company research. And if you do !research, you'll get a link to this spreadsheet over here. Got to point the different way here. And yeah, so let's go through this. So this first tab is basically just the instructions. Obviously this isn't up to date, so I'll go through and I'll update some of this stuff, but these are your main instructions. So if you're on Google Drive, make a copy of this for yourself because you're going to need to edit this. You won't be able to edit my copy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start with the priorities tab and talk about like what's important to you on the job. And then what we'll do is we'll make a new tab along the bottom here. Like I've got environment and SaaS companies and gaming, like whatever industries are interesting to you. We're going to put those along the bottom, and then inside each one of these, we're going to build like some different companies. For example, like Acme Inc. You know, it's like here's some information about them. So we'll go through some of that, and then we'll add companies to those tabs, and then we're going to go find information, and I'll give you some ideas on where I go to look for some of that info. There are a handful of places depending on the size of the company and the age of the company. I sometimes go to different places for some of that. And then what you want to do is you want to always ask yourself, like, is it okay with me that I can or cannot find this information? And then I'm going to talk about something that I've chatted about on the channel in the past about how to use this information and why it's important and things like that. So we're going to go through some of that. So let's talk about the priorities. So when it comes to these priorities, there are different things that are going to be important to you based on, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Based on the company, like the company values and just what you want in a job, what you don't want in a job, all that kind of stuff. These are things that are all just, you know, what do you care about? Do you care that the company is remote? Do you care that they do test-driven development? Now, my criteria is going to be different than your criteria, and the order that you put these in is also going to be different than the order I might put them in. And so what I always tell people is like the most important things to you need to be at the top of the list. The less important things for you need to be at the bottom of the list. But there's different criteria about the company culture, and then the people are like who can you find on LinkedIn or company blogs and things like that. Like find some names of people. You're going to use this for cover letters because you don't want to address a cover letter to whom it may concern, or dear hiring team. Like you want to try to find a name. And if you can't, then you just start the salutation, like regarding the junior developer position at Khan Academy or something in this case. And that's your salutation instead of dear hiring team. It's just like, you know, here's a letter regarding blah, blah, blah. And then you just go right into your introduction. So there's no other like real salutation there. But you're going to add and remove like as many of these things as you'd like. So will they pay for relocation? Like, is their headquarters somewhere and you're gonna have to like pack and move? Will they pay for that? You can find out this kind of information. You may not be able to find it publicly, and that's okay. Do they have an API or library or usable tool or something like that? Start adding that stuff into your projects now. If this is a company that you're really interested in, you can start, planning out projects where you can build this kind of stuff into a project maybe. Cool. All right. So let's dive in a little bit. We'll start with like just SaaS companies. So from here on the spreadsheet, this list of criteria and people, you'll see the reference up here is coming from the priorities tab. And so as you build this out, it should automatically update this for you. Now, the order of these things may stay static. And so you can always come in and you can like redefine the range of these things, or you can just copy and paste it over. But every new tab that you make a copy of here, what I would do is I would make a whole copy of the priorities tab. And so let's say I wanted to get into like insurance companies. I'm going to come to priorities and I'm going to make a whole copy of this tab, and I'm going to duplicate this tab. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call it like insurance companies or something like that. And then I'm just going to delete that whole column. And now I've got another copy of this thing ready to go. And then you're just going to start adding your companies in here. So the company name will be here. So now in this case, you want education. So I'm going to rename this to education. And we're actually going to put in Khan Academy. All right, so let's go find out about Khan Academy. Let's go look at the sources that I would go look at around Khan Academy. So the first one obviously is going to be their own website. And I'm going to pull up like their about page. I'm also going to pull up their Wikipedia page because this is going to be relatively unbiased third-party information about the company. You can also go look at who the founder is, and you can go find information about them. You can find out information about, they're founded in Mountain View, California. So you can, if you have to relocate there to work there, that might be important to know. And so you can do a whole Google search on, Mountain View, and maybe change like cost of living in Mountain View, California, and start finding some information about that. Cool. And then I would do like Khan Academy jobs. And they've got a whole careers page. So we're going to pull up that page. Let's see, education resource things. There's lots of different kinds of roles in here, 100 plus more jobs. So they got a lot of jobs listed on here. I'm just going to pull all those things up. So they use Greenhouse. So we can see what applicant tracking system they use. So that's good to know. So now we can tailor the resume based on what Greenhouse uses, because Greenhouse is a pretty enterprisey level applicant tracking system. It does a very good job parsing resumes, but it's not perfect. For example, I submitted someone's resume for a job where they had their phone number and their email like vertically stacked. And when it imported into Greenhouse, it put all of that as an email address. So it was like their whole phone number and their email address all mashed together as the email, and it didn't find their actual phone number. So like knowing those kinds of things will help you like separate things on the resume a little bit more as it's going through and like trying to pick up those bits of information. So, so knowing that will be important. On the company website itself, I would be looking for things right down at the very bottom. Like we want to look for, our team, like who is the team. You can definitely find out like who are the people on the team. Now, I would typically want to open this up on a whole new page, but even when I control click on it, it loads the whole new page in the browser. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to right click on it and say open that in a new tab. Looks like they're pretty transparent about their finances. Let's go look at that. Again, we've got the careers page. We got press releases. Press releases can be helpful to know about like company research and stuff like that. That would be good to know. Cool. So they're a 501(c), so they're a registered nonprofit, which is why they have to be transparent about their finances. But the other cool thing, because they're nonprofit, we can go find their public tax returns. and we can actually see like how much income does the company actually make. They should be transparent about it on their financial page. So that's just an annual report. So I got 2 copies of that. So this is their annual report from 2020. This is 2 years old. So what we can also do then is we can go look up 501(c) tax return for Khan Academy. So they're on ProPublica. GuideStar profile, so we can pull up some of this stuff. We can find out all kinds of information about IRS data and so on for the company. This can be helpful. Another place that I like to go look at is called Crunchbase. Now Crunchbase they have a paid tier, but there is some limited information that you can get as a free user on their site. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. And I'm going to pull up Khan Academy in here as well. Oops, Khan Academy. Pull them up as well. So we can see how much funding they get. We can see a little bit of information. Now, the information on Crunchbase isn't always going to be up to date. They go through and they're like actively trying to scrape some of this information. This is also information that the company can also go in and provide and things like that. So some of this information may not be accurate. Unnamed Toy, thanks for the follow, by the way. Sorry that I missed that a minute ago, but welcome to the stream. We're helping RoboOso do some company research today. So I'm just showing them like these are all the different places that I'm going to go find information about the company. Now, Khan Academy's been around for a while. They're not going anywhere. They're really well established as a company. They've raised some money, but they have to do fundraising because they're a registered charitable organization. And so now being nonprofit doesn't mean they can't make money. It just means they're not in the business to make a profit as a business. They certainly need to make money to pay salaries and so on, but any additional money that they get, they have to go do something with that extra money because they're not looking to like bolster shareholder, pockets and things like that. So, okay, so let's go find out information about them. Again, we can pull up some of their financials. We can go see like when they had funding rounds and how much they've raised. So they've had 5 rounds of funding. The last round of funding was July 2020, and that was a grant that they got. So all of their fundraising has been grant money. You can go through, you can find out who's been giving them that money. Sometimes that matters, especially when they're a really small company. Knowing who's giving them money can give you an idea into the kind of mentorship that company leadership is getting. Some investors are better than others as far as like the kind of advice that they're going to give and so on. Some companies or like some investment companies are very aggressive with their advice. Some are a lot more lenient. And so knowing who gives them that money is also really interesting too. So knowing who is, because when a company gives, like when a VC firm or venture capitalist or investment firm gives money to a company, sometimes they want a seat on the board of directors. Sometimes they want some sort of leadership type of position. There's usually strings attached with that money. Like they want some kind of say in how the business is run because, they're investing money. They want to make sure that that you're not just blindly going to use their money. They want some visibility into how you're going to use that money. And so they may want some amount of power, or at the very least, they want a position of information that they can watch everything that's going on in the company. And so usually it's like a board of directors kind of thing. And so being on a board of directors means you're also giving influence and information back to the company on competition and things that, like let's say I was on the board of directors. I would go be looking at other competition, finding out about them, and relaying that information back at these board meetings as well to say, by the way, I heard that such and such a company is also doing this. Like they're catching up as a competitor. How is your company staying more aggressive? And I can really start to lead from the inside as an investor. Even though I'm not running the business, I can still kind of prompt like, hey, I think that we also need to be doing this. And because I'm in a seat of power, I have a little bit of influence over the direction of the company and the kinds of things that the company's doing. And so knowing who gives money to a company can also give you an idea of like, where's that company going. So those are interesting things to know. It may not be super relevant when you come back to this whole thing over here of like, you know, is it okay with me that I found out that information? Sometimes it'll be okay, sometimes not. Sometimes you won't care. The other place that I like to go is LinkedIn. We'll go look them up on LinkedIn. So let's go look at, sorry, let me close these things down. And let's go look at Khan Academy as a school. 942 employees. I guarantee this is not accurate. I bet they don't have that many employees. If we come over here and we look at their annual report, this is going to be information about like how much money they raised, like how much fundraising they did and things like that, how many students they reached and things like that. There's going to be some amount of information in here, but their actual like real information, like their tax information here is also like, this is going to be like, it's public. Like they have to share this information and you can actually go find their actual tax return that they filed. Now, this is, again, it's only showing 2020. Where's 2021? Like there should be a 2021 out there somewhere. Contact info, assets amounts, income amounts, Form 990, revenue. Okay, so it looks like you actually have to pay to get information on that website. But there are free versions of this stuff out there. This one is free. You have to like register, but you can actually download some of the information off of here. But this is all really old. Like they haven't updated since 2018. Ideally, we can find something from 2020 and actually get like the actual thing. So here we can actually download the full filing from ProPublica. It's going to go render this. It'd be nice if we could find the 2021, but that's okay too. But here's their tax. This is their tax thing that they had to file. So you can go find all the contributions, program service revenue, investment amounts, some kind of other revenue. So they got like 51,000 and just miscellaneous income from somewhere. Total amount of revenue, $46 million. They had $8 million worth of expenses. Sorry, 54 million in expenses. So they lost $8 million over the year. That can also be important to know too, is how much money have they got in the bank? Because if they lost $8 million, then that's important to know. So they had $86 million. They lost $8 million. So they've still got $77.8 million worth of assets. Now, assets could be building and materials and computers and, you know, stuff like that. So that's not necessarily cash in the bank. So we would probably want to find out how much cash do they actually have in the bank, because if they're burning $8 million a year, we can go do some quick math on that. So they're burning other way around, 8 divided by 12. They're burning about $700,000 a month in expenses. Some of that's going to be salaries and so on. Sorry, it's not just 8 million. Sorry. Salaries, $38 million just in salaries. So knowing how much money they're paying in salaries divided by 12 will give you like an average salary range. Now keep in mind that CEO's salary is going to be like way more than other people and things like that. But we can also find some of that information in the tax filing here as well. Like how much they actually pay these people, because they're a public company. They are nonprofit. They need to be able to, like they will be sharing some of that information in here too. So we can actually go find out how much Mr. Sell should actually be making as salary. That should be listed in here. So CEO is making $760,000 a year. COO is making $675,000 a year. CFO $375,000, and so on and so on. So like here's their leadership and how much salary they all make. So now you can come in and say, okay, well, of that $38 million in salary, the executive team is making 4.7 million of that money. So now we can go figure out, okay, well, how much money is everybody else making? Let's go average that out by how many employees they actually have. And now you can get an idea of like, okay, let's say they do have 1,000 employees. 38 million in salaries minus let's call this 5, that's still $33 million worth of salaries divided by 1,000 employees. That's still like $300K per employee, which isn't necessarily going to be the case, but you can start to work out a range of like, I think their employees are making approximately this much money. Could be helpful to know. Salaries in the US are pretty impressive. I mean, executive teams always make like tons and tons of money. So the average tech industry salary right now is going to be somewhere around 150,000 US, depending on the company and seniority levels and things like that. So, hey Rand, good to see you in chat as well. Steven Saggyball, should I keep my pre-IPO stock in Verily? I mean, we can go find that out too. I mean, we're in the middle of doing some company research here, so yeah, we can go find that out. So anyway, you can go find the full tax breakdown of all this stuff. So let me paste that in chat for you, Robo. So if you want to go grab that. So again, is it okay that we can find that information? Yeah, this is actually pretty helpful to know. If you really want to dive deep and ask some really good questions during your interviews, if you get interviews with them, you can dig in on some of this stuff and go, hey, company leadership, I noticed X, on your tax return from 2020, like, let's talk about it. So you can find out that kind of information. So back over on LinkedIn, they claim to have 942 employees. Do they actually have that many? That would be really good to know. Now, clicking on their list of employees, what I would want to do is I would want to look at all the filters, and you want to make sure that the current company is set to Khan Academy. You can also, an interesting thing here is you can look at a past company also being Khan Academy and show results from there. So nobody ever went back to the company. So if people quit, they don't tend to ever go back to the company. Is that a deal breaker? Not necessarily, but for me, it's kind of an interesting thing of like, will a company welcome you back? Sometimes that can be kind of an interesting thing to think about. So they claim to have 962 employees here. Senior technical recruiters. So again, these are the kinds of things that you want to find on LinkedIn. So I typically tell people, you want to find 4 people. You want to find like someone at your peer level, someone at a more senior level of what you do, so you have some mentorship. You want to find a hiring manager, and you want to find a recruiter. Well, right on the first page, I've got a senior technical recruiter. So go reach out to Amy. There's a director of engineering. Directors of engineering are going to be in charge of the managers, and directors are going to be usually involved in the hiring. Engineering leader is pretty vague. I probably wouldn't reach out to somebody just calling themselves an engineering leader, because that doesn't tell me anything. Senior engineering manager would be a step down from director of engineering, so you could probably reach out to Brian. And then staff engineer, like that's right at the top of the chain when it comes to hands-on contributor. They would be like the utmost mentor, but probably more like a senior software engineer would be better. If you're coming in at a junior or intermediate level, reach out to Emily, for example. So you want to keep track of all of their names back here on education. You want to keep track of all of their names in here. Who's the peer level dev? Who's the senior level dev? Who's the director of engineering? Can you find a VP of engineering? This is also going to give you like a top-down list of who to address that cover letter to. But then go filling in this information, like stuff that matters to you. For example, one thing I talk about is like, is it a pet-friendly office? Like some people care about that. They want, cuddly puppies and kittens crawling all over their desk. But some people have really strong allergies and they can't work at an office if it's pet-friendly. And so you might need some accommodations around like, hey, is there an area of the office where they're not allowed to bring the pets because I have allergies? Or can I just work remote because I have allergies? I can't come to the office. Those kinds of things could be important. What kind of parental leave do they give? What kind of childcare do they give? You can get some of this information out of the job post, but you can also get that information by reaching out to the recruiting team for that job. So as you're finding out this information, you're going to fill in all of this information based on the criteria that's important to you. Now, if you can't find something like, will they pay for relocation? Let's say you can't find an answer for that. Well, now you have a very specific question that when you're reaching out to these people and say, hey, I have a very specific question or two about working at Khan Academy that I'd like to ask you. can we meet for a coffee, or can we hop on a Zoom call or something like that? Like, I'll send you the questions ahead of time, but can we connect so that I can ask you these questions? And then you can say, hey, I'm interested in this job. I realize that you're in Mountain View and you're on campus or on site. I'm going to have to come to the office. You know, could you tell me at a high level, like, what are the prerequisites for the company paying to relocate employees to the area? That would be something to ask of the HR team, not to the engineering management team. That would be up to like the HR team. So now you've got a very specific question to ask them. You're not necessarily going to ask that at peer level unless as you're researching those people. So let's go take a look at one of these people that we looked at. So let's go find Emily because she's highlighted here. So let's go see whether Emily, works around Mountain View. Mountain View. Okay, so that job was in Mountain View. Facebook doesn't say location. Oculus doesn't say location. No location. San Francisco Bay Area. So it looks like they've kind of generally always worked around that area. So asking Emily about relocation probably isn't going to be very helpful. Let's go find someone else. Let's go find Eric. Mountain View, Cupertino, Santa Clara. And then a whole bunch of places where they don't list a location. So asking Eric about relocation is probably also not going to be relevant. But if we could find an employee where, their current job is at Khan Academy in Mountain View and their last job was not in Mountain View, then that would be a good person to reach out to and say, like, hey, when you joined Khan Academy, did they pay for relocation? Like, that's a specific question that now we can ask that person about, like, what was it like to work there? And now you can ask them a very specific question about the company. So let's just, for the heck of it, let's go see if we can find somebody like that. Software engineer. Let's go look at Cat. Mountain View, Greater Minneapolis. Here we go. So they were at this job until April 2019. August 2019, they started at Khan Academy. So they had a small gap in their resume here. That could have been time to relocate. So this would be somebody that I would want to reach out to and say, hey, Kat, I've got some questions about Khan Academy. I'm thinking about applying for a job here. I noticed that I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you went from this job to this job and that you relocated, or, did you actually relocate? Like, I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, it looks like you relocated. I would ask, did you relocate for the job or are you remote? And if you relocated, is that something that the company paid for? Those would be questions now that you can ask very specific questions to very specific people within the company. So these kinds of things can end up being really, really helpful for that company research. If that's something that's really important to you, if that's on your criteria that, if they need me to relocate, I need them to pay for that relocation, then you need to ask about it. Now, if you're an entry-level developer, sometimes it can be risky to relocate an entry-level developer. I will be really forthcoming on that. Some companies will not pay to relocate junior devs. And so, again, that could be really important to know. That could stop you from applying for a job and wasting time applying for a job. If you can find out from that company that, no, they won't pay to relocate you and you're going to have to move there on your own, well, let's go back and look at that cost of living in Mountain View and go see, like, what's it like to live there versus where I live, and go see the difference in prices and so on. There's actually a cost of living calculator. Trying to think. I think it was Bankrate. Yeah. So I can say I'm coming from Arvada, Colorado. Is that going to be in here? No, we'll just say Denver. So I'm going to move from Denver to Mountain View. Nope. San Francisco. And we'll say my current income, we'll just say it's 150,000. Okay. So if I make 150,000 in Denver, I need to make $260,000 in San Francisco to have the same sort of level of living. Cost of living is 73% higher in San Francisco. So, like, knowing that kind of thing can be really helpful, but it also breaks it down from, like, here's what it costs for groceries, here's what it costs for housing and utilities. Now, this may not be 100% up to date, but it'll give you some idea of, if you're paying this much for rent, In Denver, you're probably going to be paying closer to $4,000 a month for rent right in San Francisco. So again, it's not going to be like super specific, but it'll give you some ideas of like, if I have to relocate there, like what kind of salary should I be asking for? What kind of costs am I going to incur by living there? So those kinds of things could be really important. And then you're gonna be like, okay, you know what? Maybe I don't want to go. Like if if they are not remote, and I have to relocate there, then I need a much higher salary when I'm talking to that recruiter. So again, this is all coming into play in that company research. And then you always want to come back and be like, is it okay with me that I found out this information? Like maybe I don't want to actually live near Mountain View or, within an hour or two of Mountain View because it's going to be really expensive to live there. If I'm going to be making like, 110, 120,000 a year, I'm not going to be able to afford to live there based on that cost of living that we saw. Like I'm going to need somebody else living with me making that same amount of money in order to pay for rent and pay for utilities and pay for blah, blah, blah. You're going to need a roommate or a partner that works or something like that, also making similar level of money in order to live right in this case, San Francisco. So, pull up a cost of living. If the company will not relocate you and they are not remote, then you're going to need a much higher salary. And the companies are also going to know this. This isn't going to be a surprise to the company. But these are things that you're going to fill in on here. And if you can't find that information, now you're going to reach out to the people that you could find on LinkedIn or press releases and things like that. And you want to go reach out to those people and say, hey, can we connect on LinkedIn for a quick call? I have some very specific questions I'm going to ask. I've got information ahead of time. Now, you don't want to break up this whole list and say like, hey, I couldn't find any of this information online. Some of this you'll be able to find. But also while you're on the phone with a recruiter, you can say like, hey, I've got a couple of questions about like, do you do any sort of like wellness perks or parental leave? Like, what kind of information can you tell me about, company health benefits and things like that? You can find out that kind of information. Sometimes companies will also blog about, we do this for our employees, we do that for our employees. So you can go look at press releases because sometimes companies are really public, like, hey, look how great we are. We do all this stuff for our employees. You can go find out that kind of information from their press releases. So knowing where to find that information can also be really helpful. So those are a handful of places that I would be looking at for Khan Academy. So hopefully that's helpful there. So we did have another question from, I got to scroll back and try to find it now. Sorry that I missed another question that came in. Stephen asked, should I keep my pre-IPO stock in Verily? So let's go look at Verily. So again, I'm going to go to Crunchbase. Where did I have Crunchbase on here? And we're going to go look at Verily. Now, I don't know Verily, but we're going to go look them up anyway. So Steven, let me know if you're still in chat and we'll go through like kind of my thoughts here on like researching a company and getting some idea. Now, I don't know the company. I don't know the direction. I don't know really anything about them, but we can definitely take a peek into, the kinds of considerations I would look at. Yep, you're still here. Cool. All right, well, let's dive in. Let's see what's going on. So they've made one acquisition. They've had other investments. They've raised a crap ton of money. Yeah, let's go take a peek. So they've had 3 funding rounds. They've had 4 exits. So have they been bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold like a bunch of times? Because that can be a little bit alarming. Looks like they've made other investments into other things around diversity, which is fantastic. And it's been a history of it, which is great as well. So I like that they are also investing in that kind of stuff, and they're investing like big amounts of money too. Oh, sorry, that was money raised, not money that they invested. But they were one of the investors in this company. Now, I don't think it's going to break it down like, oh, Verily chipped in this amount of money and so-and-so chipped in this amount of money. to actually break down that 1.2 billion, but they were one of the people that helped raise 1.2 billion dollars for this. So seeing that, that's neat for me to know. That's neat. All right, so let's dive in here. Let's close this down. So who are their investors? Invested by Alphabet. I mean, that's, stop, go away. Why are you doing that? All right. So who has invested in Verily? Alphabet. So that's Google's parent company. Temasek, Silver Lake, again, Silver Lake. So the fact that some of these people are coming back and reinvesting in the company is a good sign. It also means that the company trusts the input from their investors to keep them on as like second round investments, and that they're not just always like bringing new people in and new voices. When a company brings in new investors, that can sometimes be like, we took that first round from, Joe and Bob's investment shack, and, we didn't really like their investment, and their advice that much. So when we raise the next round, we're not going to take money from them. We're going to take money from someone else instead. That can be a hint that they didn't like the advice that they got last time, and or just that they want a broader perspective on advice. Sometimes companies will invest early because they're good at helping startups get off the ground. And then the next round, they take investment from companies that sort of like get a company to that next level and that next level and so on. The fact that they're going back to Silver Lake and Temasek tells me that these investment firms are probably good at multiple stage companies, which means that they've got a good pool of mentorship and growth ideas and strategies and things like that that they can relay in their leadership roles, probably being on board of directors and things like that. And so for me, that's kind of a good sign. The fact that they're dipping into a pension plan as an investment feels a little weird, but it's kind of interesting. But they've raised a lot of money. The last round that they raised was December 2020. Series unknown, which is fine, but like how much was that? So the last round of funding was $700 million. So early stage was 800 million, then they raised $1 billion, then they raised 700 million. The fact that this went down isn't necessarily alarming. It could just mean that they didn't need to raise that much more money. But it could also be like, oh, you know what? It was December 2020. Like people were still kind of wondering like what's going on with businesses and whatever. But I'd be curious, like what have they been doing with that $700 million in the last year and a half? Because it's been a year and a half since they raised that $700 million. And so one question I might be asking of an engineering manager is, hey, I noticed that 700 million round, can you speak publicly at all about burn rate and like how much of that is still in the bank, as far as like salaries and things like that. They may not be able to talk about that until you actually get hired, but they may be willing to share some information like, oh yeah, our burn rate's fine. Like we got lots of cash in the bank. Depending on what they do and so on. So is it worth investing? I mean, it's hard to say. If they've raised that much money, your strike price is probably really high. That would be my guess. When they raise that much money, they've got to turn around. They've got to give a whole bunch of that stock to these investment companies because they want to make back $2.5 billion, probably times 5 or times 10 that money, which means they're putting an expectation on Verily to raise anywhere upwards of 25 billion when they actually go public. That's a huge expectation on the company. They're gonna want at least 2 to 5 times that money. At best, they're gonna hope that it's like 10x that money. It's probably not gonna happen, but I'd be curious about like a ballpark range. Like, is your strike price more than $20 a share? Or is it like between $10 and $20 a share? Like things like that will make a big difference. Now, when you ask a question like, is it worth it? I mean, I don't know anything about the company. I don't know anything about the leadership. I can kind of make assumptions based on this alone about like the like how long has the company been around, who's in the company, things like that, and look at the summary. But I'm also not a tax investor, or like a tax accountant and so on. So I can't advise you. Like in good conscience, I can't advise you to say like, oh yeah, you should totally put your money back into the company. They've raised a lot of money. Your tiny investment in pre-IPO stock is going to be like a drop of a drop of a drop in the bucket, based on the amount of money that they've raised. If they've got 700 million in the bank and you have to give them like $10,000 or whatever for your pre-IPO stock, like that's not going to move any needle for them whatsoever. But it does give them a signal that you've got skin in the game, that you care about what the company does, you care about the direction of the company. That's really what buying those pre-IPO shares means to a company, is that you're invested, you're going to stick it out, you're in it for the long haul, kind of thing. Now, obviously, you can't talk about this in a public channel like this, but if they've been chatting internally about should we go public someday, then again, you need to make that determination on your own. If you can talk to managers and say like, hey, what's the exit plan for the company? You can sometimes raise those in town hall meetings or leadership Q&A meetings and things like that. Say like, what's the exit plan here? We've raised $2.5 billion. Like, what's the plan? We got all this cash in the bank, blah, blah, blah. Like, what kind of direction are they going to give? It's public knowledge that they want to go IPO. Okay. They gave me like 60K in shares as part of your salary. All right, awesome. So that's going to vest over 4 years as well. So depending on how long you've been there, you're not getting all 60K all in one shot. You're going to earn that 60,000 worth of shares over time. And then hopefully this share price continues to go up. Now, what that strike price is going to depend a lot on like what the strike prices were kind of all along. Let's go see what else we can find out. Like, how long has the company been around? So they've only been around for 7 years. So they raised $2.5 billion. They've only been around for 7 years, also known as Google Life Sciences. Oh. Okay, yeah. This is like the health division or whatever of Google, right? They've been doing all kinds of interesting things like the contact lens to measure your blood sugar and all that kind of stuff. I knew the name. 30K of it vests in March, the rest vests next year. Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. I mean, if they want to go public, then, and they're backed by Google and they're part of Google Life Sciences and whatever, I mean, they're not going to let that company fail. I can't say like, oh yeah, you should totally invest your money. Verbally, I can't tell you to do it. No, honestly, like in all sincerity, I'm not here to provide that kind of advice, but I mean, if it's a Google backed company, it's probably going to do fine, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case. You have to use your own wisdom and discernment on, is this money that you can afford to put back into the company? Typically, what I tell people is when you're granted stock options, what you should do is think about, try to think about like, how much stock equity have I been granted? What would it cost if I were to invest that money every month and then put that money aside in a bank account and then don't touch that money? So let's say they give you 1,000 shares, they're $1 each. That's $250 a year that you're gonna have to put back into the company. And so that's $20 a month. So put that $20 a month in a bank account. Whenever you decide to leave, or once you decide like, okay, now's the time, I'm just gonna go ahead and invest that money, you've already got that cash ready to go. For you to just come up with $30,000 and say like 30,000 of it in, vests next March, I mean, if you've got $30,000 just kicking around that you can just put back into the company, that's fine. But if you save that money over time, then you've got that cash on hand. And if you decide not to, you've got cash on hand. You've got a financial buffer for yourself that you can use between jobs, or you can use it to invest in yourself, in your career. You can use that money for something else, or you can use it as just money between jobs and just take time off and take a vacation or whatever. You've got that money on hand. And so whenever you're granted private equity or any kind of equity in a company, generally what I recommend is like, whatever it would cost you to make that investment every month, put that money aside if you can afford to. Put that money aside in a separate bank account. Don't touch it. Like, literally open another bank account just to put that money in there. Now, if the money or if the bank account charges you transaction fees or whatever every month, then don't do that. Don't incur debt in order to save money like that. But like, there are banks out there that don't charge any fees to have like an extra bank account. So just open an extra savings account and just push money into that account. Don't withdraw it. You're going to make like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent on interest. That's, it's not there to gain money. You could turn around and invest that other money, in other vehicles if you want, but there's always a possibility you're going to lose that money. If you just put it in a bank, then you got that cash on hand and it's ready to go. And then just save up that money over time. If you've been at that company for a while and you've seen that stock price grow, the other thing to consider there is the strike price that you were granted and the valuation of the stock now might be different enough that you're going to get hit with AMT. So buying that 30,000 in shares, it's going to cost you $30,000. But if the valuation is like $100,000, to the IRS, you just made $70,000 in profit. You may have to pay tax on that $70,000 before you can even do anything else with that stock later, right? Like if it's going to be another 5-10 years before they even go public, you've got to pay that tax now based on that spread. So that's a consideration of, should I invest that money? You need to go talk to a tax accountant and say, based on my current taxable income rate, and based on this, and based on the share price now, based on my strike price and based on the share price now, if I buy this, am I going to have to pay tax on this money? That's something that you're going to have to talk to a tax accountant for. That's not something I can help you with, as much as I might want to like dig in on that kind of stuff. I'm not educated enough on that tax level. I will say from my own personal experience, I have not had to prepay AMT on any of the investments I've done, but my strike prices have also been less than $10. And my share prices have always, I think, been also less than $10. I'm not saying $10 is like a limit of any kind. I'm just saying, like, for ballpark numbers, when I've made I've made 6 investments, and 5 of them have already had exits that have been successful. One of them I still own like additional shares. The rest I've like fully cashed out. I have not had to prepay any tax. I had to pay tax later when I actually sold the shares. I had to pay like enormous tax bills to the IRS, but I never had to prepay any tax. But if your strike price is low enough compared to the current valuation of the stock, you may have to prepay tax. So talk to a tax accountant about that, because that'll also be an important consideration. You might be able to come up with that $30,000, but then if you also have to turn around and pay like another 30, 40, 50,000 to the IRS next tax season, which would be the next calendar year. If you're going to buy them in March, you'd have to prepay that AMT, for that next tax year. If you wait until the following April, you may also get hit with penalty fees because you bought the stock in March. You may want to prepay that AMT right away, so you're not paying additional penalties next April 2024 when you actually have to pay the AMT. You may want to think about prepaying that early as well, and you can talk to the IRS about how to do that. So, handful of things there. But again, I'm not a tax accountant. I'm not a tax advisor. Is it worth it? I mean, it could be. If it's a FANG-backed company, they're probably not going to let it just fail and fizzle out. The fact that they've raised a lot of money and it's health sciences, like that's the kind of thing that companies are going to be investing in, I think, going forward. It could be worthwhile, but there are going to be tax implications for sure, and you'll want to talk to a tax accountant about it. Cool. Let me go back through chat, see if I missed anything else. Will Snable was also talking about, what does a staff engineer make in the US? It depends on the company. Staff engineers could make 300, 400,000 in salary, depending on the company. If it's a smaller, like startup kind of thing, probably like 200K range. But it depends on the company and things like that. I would imagine if it's a FANG level company, it would probably be probably closer to like 600,000-700,000 in salary. That would be my guess. have a friend who's an executive in Norway at a reasonably large company. He makes about 150,000 a year. Yeah. I mean, if it's equivalent of 150,000 US, I mean, again, keeping in mind cost of living and things that you don't have to pay for over in Norway that we have to pay for over here, makes a big difference for sure. Like your housing probably doesn't cost as much as the housing costs here. You're not going to have the same kind of healthcare costs and, groceries and things like that. But your tax rates are generally higher in Europe than they are here in America as well. Lots of considerations there. So it's hard to compare those things dollar to dollar and say, wow, you make so much more money. It's like we spend a lot more money over here too, which is why the salaries are as enormous as they are. Cool. Well, hopefully the company research thing was helpful. We've been going for about an hour. If you've got other questions about like career prep or interview prep, we spent some time showing RoboOso like how to do some company research. So I added a new chat command for that, so you can do bang research and you can get at that spreadsheet. And you'll see some of the instructions on there. I'll go back and I'll clean some of that stuff up as well. We're gonna have a resume sample. So we're gonna do a resume review on Thursday. So if you want to send in a resume, you can send that over to this link. Sorry, I hit the thing twice. You can send a link over, or send a resume over to this link. This link here that you see in chat is basically going to be like a Google Doc sample of things that I'm going to do. Like while I'm doing the resume reviews, I'm going to go over to this Google Doc and show you, well, let's take that block of code, or let's take that block of text from your resume and let me show you how I might reformat that. And so it'll give you some ideas around like how I might do that. Now that's going to be publicly viewable, and so people will also be able to grab those samples and things like that. So I'll probably build up a few samples in there. Just, here's how I might talk about a project. Here's how I might talk about like a skills block, things along those lines. And I can show samples of my own resume and things that I've done on my own resume and things like that too. But we'll be doing a big resume review on Thursday. So if you want to send in resumes, that would be fantastic. I do have a handful of extras from when we did the resume review with Tiffany a couple of weeks back. So we've got some of those that we'll go through. I think I've had one or two new ones come in since last stream. And so we'll be going over those as well. I used to contact people like the day before or the day of saying like, hey, we're going to go through your resume today. If I get like a ton of resumes, it's not easily practical to like go back and notify all those people. So, but I do have a whole resume review playlist on the YouTube channel that you can go check out. And so you can always go back to see whether or not we have reviewed your resume that you've sent in. So you're welcome to anonymize it as much as you're comfortable. I generally ask, please anonymize your phone number and your email address because they are going to be public on the internet. And so if you're not comfortable with those things being on the internet, then you can go ahead and like mask them and make them something else. So. Cool. Otherwise, happy to take other questions. Otherwise, I'm going to dip into Discord and find some of our anonymous questions from there. So if you get other questions, feel free to drop those in chat. Robo says, I have one other question. Have you done a video with advice for staying consistent with coding and managing other tasks? So give me some more context around that. So when you talk about staying consistent with coding and managing other tasks, are you talking about like once you're on the job, or are you talking about like as part of the preparation for interviewing? Like, give me a little more context around some of that. I've been using Pomodoros, but it's been hard. Okay, so you're just talking about like just day-to-day kind of coding. Is that what I understand from that? Like just, now that I'm actually in the job, like how do I actually get my work done kind of stuff? Oh, just as part of preparation. I gotcha. Okay. I mean, yeah, I've given out handfuls of advice around like interview prep when it comes to how do you juggle all the things, because there's a lot to do. You've got coding, you've got things like leak code, which is an unfortunate part of what we do with interviewing, but it's a necessity. It's a necessary evil because our interview process asks you to demonstrate what you can do. There's also project work because you want to build projects that are going to be enticing to companies. There's company research like we just did. We spent a good, 20 minutes just looking up a single company. as you find those sources, you'll get a little bit faster at it, and you'll get a little bit faster at like distilling that information down into like exactly what it is you're looking for. So it'll get a little faster as you do it. I was pausing to explain a lot of it as I was going, but if I were to do that company research, it takes me 10-15 minutes to get started, and then from there I start reaching out to people and start asking them questions. But then there's lots of wait time in between, like waiting for them to get back to you and so on. So you're doing elite code, you're doing project work, you're doing company research. Based on all of that, you're putting together a resume for them. I would say any project work like that you do should be going on that long, big resume anyway. Like you always want to keep track of that stuff. Like that big, long resume, it's something that you're just going to keep updating your entire career. Like anything you get involved in at work, you're going to be adding bullet points on there. Any projects that you take on at work, you're going to be adding bullet points on there. What was your impact on that project? Add your own bullet points in there. Keep that up to date always. Because once you leave that job, you start to forget, and it's a lot harder to recall that information later on of like, what did I do at that job 5 years ago? Like it's going to be much harder for you to remember what you did and the impact that you had. Because you want to have like those really strong impact statements on your resume. That's what's going to make you stand out and make people want to interview you, is having impact on your resume. You may put together cover letters. Those take a couple of minutes each. Once you have the long resume, customizing that resume for a particular job doesn't take that long. It'll take a couple of minutes. But once you have the basic format done and you've got all the content on there, it's generally faster to like pull stuff out and bring it back down to that 1-page resume or 2-page resume, depending on what you want to do. But there's a lot involved. You've got coffee chats with people, and you're trying to do your networking and your outreach and studying and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot to juggle. When it comes to things like using Pomodoro timers, like whatever helps you focus, like whatever helps you stay on target is important. One thing that I've realized lately is I've got 3 screens in front of me, plus a laptop over here. Like it's a lot of screens. Like I'm literally, my field of vision is like, I've got a monitor over here and monitors over here. Like I've got a big widescreen one right in front of me. I've got another widescreen off to one side, and then I've got just a regular flat screen mounted vertically over on this side. And then of course all the lights and stuff. When I'm working though, I keep all the lights off, and so it's much darker in here when I'm actually working. I only put the lights on when I'm actually streaming. But as far as staying focused, one thing I've realized is having all these screens is actually a detriment to me to get my work done, because I've got Discord on one, I've got Slack, next to that, and those are taking up a full panel. And so as those notifications are coming in my peripheral vision, I'm working on the screen right in front of me, but in my peripheral vision, I'm seeing things move, and it makes me want to look over and go, what just happened over there? And now I've lost focus on what I'm doing. Or, I've got like some other thing going on the vertical screen, kind of thing. And I'm finding for myself that it's hard to focus when I've got stuff going on all 3 screens. It's helpful though when I'm streaming, because I can pull up lots of screens and I've got things that I can share, and I've got my OBS right here in front of me where I can see chat kind of going by, and I can keep track of how many people are viewing the stream right now, so I can kind of, engage a little bit more with people in chat. And then I've got like the browser window that I share where you can kind of see the work that I do. So when I'm streaming, it's super helpful. But when I'm working, I want to like shut off 2 of the monitors and just have the one monitor, because when I need to focus, I need less distraction. Thankfully, I love my kids, but thankfully they're going back to school next week. It's been really hard to focus this summer for me because it's been so hot in Denver, and it's nice and cool down here in my basement. It's like, temperature is like 68 degrees in my basement right now. It's nice and cold. That's why I'm wearing flannel or hoodies all the time. But it's like 90, 95 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Like it's super hot outside. And so the rest of the house gets really hot. And so my kids want to be in the basement too. And they're in a room over here. Not right now. I kicked them out for the morning. Told them to actually go be in their rooms for a little while. But they've been in the room and they're playing their video games and they're watching YouTube. And so I put on noise canceling headphones. Sometimes it's the great big noise canceling headphones. And I'll put them on with just like soft background music similar to the lo-fi beats or whatever that you're hearing in the background right now, just to drown them out a little bit. And the animated lights, like I keep those things off, or I'll just have them on as a static light. But sometimes I'll just turn all the lights off and I just have like the glow of the monitors to kind of work with, just so I can zone in. So I think part of it is understanding what is distracting to you. What distracts you may not distract me, and vice versa. Like when I listen to music, it can't have lyrics. If the music has lyrics, I want to listen to the story of what's happening in the song. I used to be involved in music, and I used to go to music studios and all that kind of stuff, and play keyboard and sing and stuff like that. And so when I hear music, I listen really intently to the music production and things like that. And so when I'm working, I either have to have no music, or it needs to be just really soft, quiet, lo-fi beats where it's like a looped sample just over and over and over and over again. But if it's highly produced, I stop what I'm doing and I just kind of close my eyes and I'm just like listening to the music for a while, and then I'm not getting my work done. And so understanding what distracts you from your work will be really helpful. If it's a Pomodoro timer that works for you, great. If that doesn't work for you, stop using it. I think a lot of growth comes from just understanding, a lot of growth and maturity comes from understanding what's keeping you from getting your work done, and then stop doing that. For me, like I said, I'm starting to recognize, like, thankfully my kids are going to be going back to school, and it's just, the dog's going to be lonely and the dog's going to be like parked around my feet all the time. But my wife works part-time, so she's out of the house. And once the kids are back in school, then I'm going to have a nice quiet house to myself, and my productivity is going to skyrocket. In the meantime, I'm taking a bit of a productivity hit during the daytime. And so I tend to work more into the evening, and I end up staying up later, which then means I'm tired in the morning. And so again, I'm not really getting as much work done in the morning as I would like. I want to spend the afternoon with the kids, spend some time with them doing whatever, getting ready for school and stuff next week, and then spend my evening catching up on work and doing other things. Trying to do more recording. I can only do that when the house is quiet and the air conditioner is not running, because it's this big loud hissing noise in the background with the way our HVAC system is set up. And so I have to do my recordings when the house is quiet, which is typically at nighttime. So trying to figure that kind of stuff out, like what works for me, has been really helpful. What works for you is going to be entirely different. But I think coming up with a schedule around, when do I want to do coding? Like when is your brain most engaged for doing coding? For me, it is not first thing in the morning. I have a lot more creative ideas first thing in the morning. Like, how do I want to do that video? How do I want to make that presentation slide deck? How do I want to change up the lighting or change out, the background of how things look? Like, how do I want to do that? I'm more creative in the morning. I'm more analytical, like later in the afternoon. Like, I'm far more productive when it comes to code after lunch. So for me, if I need to sit down and actually write code, it's going to be in the afternoon, in the evening. Also late at night. I'm really productive when it comes to writing code when it's really late at night. And so knowing that about myself, if I need to sit down and write code, it's going to be like right after lunchtime, or it's going to be like after 10 p.m. That's how my brain works. Learning that about yourself takes time. Once you learn that, it's very effective. Now, it can also change over time too. Like, just because I'm productive right now at night doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be that way. But for now, for this season in my life, that's what makes me productive. So for you, if you do really well with coding first thing in the morning, do that. If you are more creative and feeling more social in the afternoon, like I'm gonna go heads down, as we call it. I'm just gonna ignore everything else. I'm just gonna write out the code that I need. And now that it's lunchtime, now I'm feeling a little bit social, and I actually want to chat with people. That's a great time to set up coffee meetings. Say, hey, you know what, if you're available like right after lunch, or between like 12:45 and 1 p.m. where you're just getting back from a lunch break or something, could we spend that 15 minutes before you actually get back to work? That also gives them an excuse to get off the call as well. And it helps you help them keep the call short, because those networking phone calls you want to keep fairly short. You just want to say, hey, I really appreciate your time. I got just some quick questions about working at your company, and then I'll let you get back to work. And just ask those questions, get them out of the way, and be like, cool, I know you got to get back to work. I appreciate your time. Can we check back in a week if I have other questions? Like, could we do another phone call just, right at the end of lunch like that? Most people are going to be okay with that. It gives them a nice break for the day. It gives them something to look forward to as well. But if you know that that's when you feel more social, then do that. For me, my social time is first thing in the morning. I like to kind of catch up with my team. I'm used to doing daily stand-ups. And so first thing in the morning, I like chatting with my teammates and talk about what's going on, as well as at the end of the day. Most of my conversation on Slack happens between like 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. It's kind of the wind down of the day of this is what I accomplished. This is where I'm leaving things. This is where I've left off. This is what I've done for the day, to hand off to other people if they need to continue working on stuff. So figuring that out about yourself can be really helpful. I'll experiment with coding at different times, see if another time is better. Yeah, everybody's a little bit different. Fool says I use a single screen setup these days. I used to think 3 screens were required. And I think that that's it's an interesting phenomenon to see on the internet of like, oh, show me your setup. And you see all these screens. You're like, oh, dang, I need that too. And I think that kind of comes back to something that I said in the last stream around like, stop reading those lists of like, you need to know these 100 things in order to be a developer. It's like, you must have, this ridiculous RGB, LED setup and whatever to be, productive as a programmer, or you need to have all these lights in order to be a streamer. Like, you don't. Like, do what works for you. Like, I wanted this. You don't have to have all of this if you want to be a streamer. You don't have to put a TV in the background, or it's just a monitor, but like, you don't have to spend money on that kind of stuff in order to stream. Just put the camera on, point it at, some neutral looking wall. Like, that's all you need to stream. Hey, Cication, good to see you in chat as well. I'll give you some blinky lights for first time chat. Hello. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. So yeah, I'm just offering advice on career advancement and interview preparation and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm always curious how people find the stream and so on. But yeah, welcome in. We've done all kinds of interesting stuff today. We did some company research. We looked at some company financials around, is this company worth investing in? And I can't really say one way or the other whether that person should invest, money in their stock. But I gave them some advice on like considerations and to actually go talk to a tax accountant and stuff like that. And then we talked about just productivity as a programmer. Like, what works for you isn't necessarily going to work for me. A lot of people think when you get into as a software developer, you're literally just sitting at your desk and writing code like 8 hours a day, and that's not the case. I think at best, I can code for like 5 hours, maybe 6 hours, and then I got to take a break. Like, at that point, my brain is tired. Like, your brain actually runs on sugar. So here, like, if you didn't know this, your brain actually needs sugar to run, not artificial sweeteners. It actually needs like natural sugars in order to operate efficiently. And it also needs water. So no sugary drinks. Well, no like caffeinated drinks. Caffeine actually doesn't help your brain. Caffeine doesn't wake you up. It makes you not feel the effects of being tired. There's a difference. It doesn't give you energy. It makes you not feel tired. Once it wears off, you feel extra tired. And those are also important things to kind of learn and know about your physiology and things like that. I'm not a physiologist at all, but I've been picking up these kinds of things lately. But your brain needs sugar. And so natural sugars are best. So eating fruit and vegetables and stuff during the day, it's also good for your teeth. Like crunchy vegetables and stuff like that, good for your teeth. So I tend to have like a bag of snap peas or carrots or something like that. It's healthy. Don't dip it in like a gallon of ranch dressing or anything like that. Like, just munch on some carrots. I'm not saying eat an entire bag of carrots. Your skin will literally turn orange if you do that. But like, have a handful of carrots. It's good for your teeth. Eat an apple. It's really good sugar. It'll wake you up. It'll wake up your brain. Things like that. Give your body variety. Don't eat the same things all day, every day. Drink lots of water. Your brain needs water and sugar. But you also need to recognize like, hey, I'm just not productive now. I need to literally get up from my desk and literally go do anything else. That's important too. It's also important to change position from time to time. So I've got a motorized desk that I can like actually stand at my desk. And so I'll typically do that a few times a day. I'll like raise it up and lower it down. Again, it changes my perspective just that little bit, where it's like, oh, now I'm standing and I've got like this rocking sort of board that I stand on, that also helps like engage core muscles and things like that. It's not like a extreme balance board or anything like that. It's only curved like a tiny little bit, but it's enough to like work on stabilizing movement and things like that. And again, it kind of keeps your brain a little more active on things like that. So figure out what works for you. I'm not suggesting that kind of thing is going to work for everybody, but figure out what works for you. But sometimes getting off the screen is important. Get off the screen, go walk around your neighborhood, go to the store and like figure out what you're going to make for dinner. Like literally get off the screen and go do anything else. Go do some laundry, go do some cleaning, like whatever. Sometimes I find like if I get really stuck on a problem, like sitting and staring at a screen all day doesn't help. I literally need to get up and walk away from the computer and go make dinner. And while I'm making dinner, I'm like, oh, that's the thing I need to do. And I'll grab a pen and paper and I'll like write down a quick note for myself, because I'm not going to like stop making dinner in the middle of making dinner and like run back down to the computer. I'm just going to make a quick note so I can, kind of use that train of thought later on. And after dinner, like I said, that's kind of when my brain kind of kicks back into like working on code again. And so I'll come back downstairs with those notes and I'll continue to work. So figure out what works for you. Sometimes that means getting off the screen for a while. But yeah, I'm finding for myself having multiple screens is not as helpful during the day, depending on what I'm doing and what I'm working on. If I'm like trying to research how to do something new, then yes, having lots of screens is helpful because I can pull up lots of documentation as well as my editor. But when I've got like Slack and Discord and my work and other notifications and other things popping up and things are like moving in your peripheral vision, then you're more likely to get distracted. At least I am. I'm more likely to get distracted by that. Epic Cat, good to see you in chat as well. It was nice to hang out on your stream the other day. Hopefully people weren't pestering you too much about your job. Any tips for team matching? So yeah, that was kind of the question on your stream the other day, is like, I got this cool job and I don't know what team I'm going to be on. When it comes to team matching, I mean, it comes down to a handful of things. Like, I'm not going to ask you who the company is because you don't want to share that publicly, which is great. As far as the team within that company, it really depends on why did you apply for a job at that company? What was your thought process around that? What were you hoping to do, or what were you envisioning yourself to do at that company? That should be your primary team. Like if I were applying, like I used to want to work at Google. Like that was like, I still am a Google fanboy. I still buy like Google phones and Google earphones and like all the Google gadgets and stuff like that. I'm probably going to buy that Pixel watch when it comes out too. If I were to go work a job at Google, I would probably want to be on the developer relations team. Which team would I want to do developer relations for? It's a good question. I used to want to be on the developer relations team for, say, App Engine. I used to use App Engine for hosting all my projects and like coming up with little project ideas. I would host them on App Engine. They gave you free quotas on stuff, and it was fantastic, and I loved using it. And I interacted with a lot of their DevRel team around App Engine whenever I go to tech conferences and so on. Fantastic group of people. And so if I were to go work at Google, for example, I would take kind of that vision of like, oh, if I ever got a job there, this is what I want to be doing. That would be my number one kind of thing of like, where would I be absolutely ecstatically happy, being part of a team? I can't really say where I would want to work at other FANG companies because I haven't really envisioned working at other FANG companies. Thinking of like Netflix, for example. I've never applied at Netflix. If I were to go work at Netflix, I would probably be interested in working on something like, the matching algorithms of like, oh, you watch these movies, we recommend these movies. But I also know about myself that I'm not great at math. So understanding the math formula behind the machine learning of, you've watched these movies and these are the characteristics of those movies, therefore we think you're also going to like these other movies that match those characteristics. I'm not going to be good at that because I'm not good at math. But it would be interesting. What else would I want to do at Netflix? Probably something around scalability. I mean, they do a ton of stuff around scale and architecture and resilience and things like that. So I would probably want a job working at Netflix in some kind of capacity around high-level architecture planning for disaster recovery and resiliency. That kind of stuff is interesting to me. So if I were to get a job at Netflix, that would be the kind of team that I would want to go work on. Now, I would probably want to come up with like 2 or 3 ideas, because if it's a really big company and they say like, hey, what team do you want to go work on? If I say I want to go join this team and they don't have room or capacity or need for someone with my background and experience, then they can't put me on that team anyway. So coming up with a couple of things of like, here's where I would be like super excited. Here's where, here are a couple of options where I'd be really happy. And as a last resort, like this would be like a 5th choice. Come up with like a handful of those choices if the company is big enough to even do that. A lot of companies, when you apply for a role, that role is already designated to a particular team. But if the company is big enough, like some FAANG companies, like for example, at Google, if I apply for a job at Google, you go through the whole interview process and then they figure out which team they want to put you on. It's not necessarily what team you want to be on. It's like, okay, you're applying as a developer relations person. These are our openings. Who want Ian on their team? And then they'll figure out like which team I'm on, or if none of the teams want me, then I don't get the job at Google. And so they go through that team matching as part of the job offer. Some companies do the team match after the job offer, where they make you an offer and they say, we want you on the team somewhere. Where do you want to be? And you have some say in that. And that sounds like what you're going through Epic at, which is it's kind of a neat thing to know that the company wants you regardless. Other jobs, it's like they've got one role on one team and you're applying for that one role on that one team. And if you get the job, you're on that team, which is fine too. So yeah, I know it's pretty generalized advice, but I would say like, what gets you excited? Like, why did you apply for that job in the first place at that company? Like, what did you envision yourself doing? That would be your number one choice. And then from there, like, what else would you be doing? Like, if that team didn't have any openings, like, what other team would you want to be on? And kind of go from there. That would be my way of thinking about that stuff. If anybody else has ideas or opinions, please drop that in chat as well. Or if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast audio later, I'm always happy to take feedback and comments. If you've got ideas on how you would do team matching at a big company where they're just going to hire you and then figure out what team you're going to go on after they hire you, I'm always interested in taking feedback from there. You have to wait to get a list of teams. Yep. I mean, you can probably find some of those team names just going through LinkedIn. Like, just try to, do some searches on LinkedIn for the kind of role that you're going to have within that company, and try to find other people that have that level of role, like, intermediate engineer or whatever, and then go see what kind of team or what kind of projects they're working on. And that can sometimes get you excited about like, oh yeah, I want to do that too. So yeah, that's how I would evaluate it myself, is that motivation of like, when I wake up in the morning, I'd be really excited to go do such and such. That would be what drives me. For me, I'm like really keen on like software testing. That's something that's been really a big, strong passion of mine. And so working at Postman is fantastic, because that's where Postman got its start, was around testing APIs. And I'm probably the biggest testing nerd on my developer relations team. People know if they've got a question about testing, they can come bug me about it, and I'm going to talk their ear off until they're tired of talking to me about testing. And then they're like, I got to go, which is fine. But that's something that I really, really like. And so I'm actually doing a webinar on the 17th around what we call contract testing in APIs. It's free, by the way. You can go check out Postman Space Camp, and you can go register for that if you want to watch me teach live. It's free to go register for that. I've experienced being hired for one team, but then 3 months later when I start, yeah, we put you on this team instead. That can be a letdown or a chance to learn something new. Yeah. I haven't had that opportunity. I mean, during my job hunt back in January, I started interviewing for one role, and then partway through the interview, they're like, "By the way, we filled that role. We still want to interview you, but it's going to be for this other company instead." It actually happened to me in December and in January. And the company in December, I was still excited about, like, yeah, let's keep talking about that. The second one, it's like, we want to move you to this other team. I'm like, I was less excited about it. And then they made an offer, and I was less excited about working for the company when they made that offer. It was low salary. It was with a team that I wasn't as excited about. And so I ended up not taking that offer, obviously. Um, I haven't had the experience of starting a job and then finding out, like, on day one, oh, by the way, you're not doing what we told you were going to do. For me, that would be a bit of a letdown. But I've also heard of people like, oh yeah, we said you were going to do this thing, and we call it a bait and switch, where like it's like, you know, we're gonna trick you into thinking that we're hiring you for this role, but really you're gonna be doing this other role. That's a very drastic kind of thing, and that would be like an immediate, like, get out of there sort of situation. But yeah, it's a little bit different for everybody for sure. But I haven't had the experience of like starting a job and then finding out that it was um, that the team that I was on was going to be different. There was one experience that I had in Los Angeles where, as part of the interview process, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to train the entire staff on this other technology stack, and we're going to be working to like migrate everything over to this other technology stack. And so when you join the team, we're going to be paying for training and blah blah blah." And I'm like, "That sounds amazing." And I get in there and I'm like, "When do we start that training?" And they're like, "Oh, maybe like a year from now, maybe a year and a half from now, but it's not like immediate." I'm like, "Well, you made it sound during the interview that it was going to be immediate." And they're like, "No, no, no, that's way off. Like, if we even do it." I'm like, "Wait, if you do it, now it's not even a certainty that you are going to do it." Like, so I ended up leaving that job after like a month. So I was put in a totally different organization for a totally different product. Yeah, that can be disappointing for sure when you have a totally different expectation. Yeah, it's disappointing when that happens. I haven't had that kind of thing happen in my career. Generally, the companies that I apply, they have a single product where it's like, this is the only thing we do. Like when I worked at SendGrid, like, we send email. That's what we do. We have the newsletter product and we have the transactional emails, but we send email. That is our product. If I were to go work at Twilio or something now, hey GBF, if I were to go work at Twilio now, I mean, they do so many other things now. If it's like, we're going to hire you on the email team, and then when you get in there, like, JK, you're going to go work on the SMS team instead. It's like, okay. But I mean, for me, I would have been applying at the company because I like the company and I like what they do, not necessarily like that product division. And so again, it comes down to what motivates you to go find that job and what's going on in that job. So what's going on, GBAV? How's things in California these days? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for dropping by. Everybody go give GBAV a follow. He's a very entertaining gaming streamer. Plays lots of Fortnite and Fall Guys. We tried some Skyrim together, which was fun a couple of nights ago, or about a week ago, I guess. We played some. There's a mod that you can download for Skyrim, which is normally a solo game, but you can actually play it together and actually go through the quest together. We found some bugs in it. It was a little bit buggy from doing a quest point of view, but it was pretty fun just roaming around Skyrim and doing some stuff together with Gavin. So thanks for dropping by, bud. Appreciate that. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to chat about too, actually, alt account for troll. All right, well, good to know that this is the alternate account for the troll. Feel free to drop by anytime with a real troll account. But thanks for dropping by. If I wanted to create a game, could I do that with just a laptop using Unity? Yeah. I mean, there's lots of like content and stuff out there for how to build a game in Unity. Lots of people streaming on Twitch about doing game development. From what I see, like, Godot seems to be a more popular platform right now for building out games. Unity, though, you can build code in C#. It's a very straightforward, high-level programming language that you can build. Unity does a lot of like 3D, like a lot of the modeling and stuff, like where you can pull in those assets and like move your 3D models around for animating characters and so on. There's a lot of those controls inside of Unity. Unity is a very popular game engine. It's been around for a long time. So yeah, you can do all of that stuff just with a laptop. Depending on the type of graphics and stuff that you're doing, it may take a while to compile things. But yeah, you can totally do that on a standard laptop using Unity, sure. And there's going to be lots and lots of content out there about how to get started with game development and so on. Couldn't have done it without me. Yeah, the Skyrim plugin wasn't too difficult to get set up, but there were some hoops to jump through. But yeah, it was fun. It would be interesting to see if we could get like a full load of 8 people like wandering the countryside. I think if we do that again, we should all start at level 1 and just go through everything and just get gear from like whatever we stomp over and kill. I think it'll be really easy to like just blast through any dungeon if there's like a whole group of us going through, for sure. Because it levels the characters that you fight based on your level. And so if we're all level 1, then everything we fight is going to be level 1. It's not like, oh, there's 8 of you, so let's make everybody else like level 4 to make it more difficult for each of us individually. But I think that that'll be better than just like, you know, maxing everybody out with all the achievements and whatever, and then have to like go gain everything anyway. I think it'd be more fun just start everybody at level 1 with no gear at all, but like maybe a bunch of gold so you can like go buy whatever you need. And then I think go from there and go rampage the countryside. I think that'd be fun. But yeah, I started getting back into the Star Wars Old Republic game, getting back into that MMO. Started doing that. I don't really do like game streaming. I like to keep the stream more about the interview advice, but I've been curious about like what kind of viewership I would get if I actually got into some gaming. But I may actually get into more like live coding or something instead, but we'll see. I've also started 3D printing some parts to make a Voron. So I'm going to order a Voron kit pretty soon. That'll take a couple of weeks to come in. So I'm going to 3D print some of the parts. I may do some live streaming around like assembling that, but that's also going to mean like cleaning off this workbench beside me in order to make that happen. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see whether that would even be of interest to people. I know some people care about that kind of stuff, but it's not as interesting to like watch somebody like hook up electronics and put together a 3D printer, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, on Thursday we're going to do a resume review. So if you're coming by, feel free to send over a resume. We're going to be doing. I've got I think probably 4 or 5 resumes so far, and we're going to be doing them fairly quick succession of like, here's some thoughts, here's some thoughts, here's some thoughts, and just kind of go through those real quick. And so if you want to send over a resume, I'm happy to do those reviews for free, and we're just going to do that. That's going to be Thursday's stream. Is primarily just resume reviews. If other questions come up, we'll address those too. But otherwise, it's going to be a resume review stream. Aside from that, I think I'm going to start to wind down unless there's other questions. I was going to hop into Discord and grab some questions, but y'all always bring really, really great questions to the chat. So I'm totally cool with not going to plan. I sometimes have an idea of like, oh yeah, today I'm going to like talk about this kind of thing. But I think today's, we got into company research, which led into like financial research, which led into other commentary about like how do we stay focused as developers and stuff like that. So I always appreciate when y'all drop by and give advice and give questions and stuff like that. I think that stuff's always a lot of fun. So I appreciate my community very, very much. You can also go join us if you want to hop in on Discord. You can also drop by Discord as well. We've always got people hanging out in there. Otherwise, let's go find somebody. Is anybody actually doing some coding today? Got some startup stuff going on. Got some 100 devs going on. We might raid into somebody doing some 100 devs. If anybody's got ideas on who to go raid, I'm always open to ideas there as well. Looks like somebody's actually looking through some behavioral questions. I think this is going to be a good one to go raid into. Let's go raid over there real quick. Looks like they're looking through some behavioral questions for interviewing. I think that those will be that'll be a good one. Oregon Curtis. Yeah, I was looking at Oregon Curtis for the 100 devs, but there's someone else that's actually going through some behavioral questions, so I think that'll be a good one to raid into. So we're gonna go raid over to Star Ansible. I don't think we've raided over there before. I don't follow them myself, so we're gonna go hop over there. Thanks for coming by, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday for the resume review stream, and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you're at. If you watched on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and leave some comments. Let me know what you think about the stream. And we'll go right over to this group here and go through some interview stuff. All right, folks, we'll catch you next time. Cheers.